Good. What's good, y'all? Hope everybody's living well and staying blessed. It's your boy Marcus B. As always, I'm joined with the one and only Mr. Evan Simmons and new guy Chris Dudick. And today is episode 30, big 30 of Holla at Your Boy. And today I sat down with one of my favorite people of all time. He was one of my first friends, if not the first friend I had at Texas State, and Mr. Stephen Vogel. And due to the times, he is in Houston, so it was a Zoom call, but nonetheless, it felt as if we were in person. We talk about how COVID has affected our lives, him being a professional musician, and how that got stripped away from him. Talk about food. We talk about family. We talk about a bunch of things, and overall, it was just a great conversation. I love the guy. I really hope you guys enjoy this episode as much as I did because it was such a good conversation. We're still not there on the subscribers, so help your boy out. Get this out to as many people as you can. If you like what we're doing out here, like, follow, subscribe, share. We appreciate y'all. Yeah, hope you enjoy the episode. Peace. Dude, it's nice to see you, bud. It's been been so long.
I think February is when you came in, right?
Yeah, it was like the weekend. It feels like almost the weekend right before everything fell apart.
Pretty close. Yeah. Yeah, it was like the last weekend of February or the first weekend of March, something like that.
Something like that, man. That feels like 5 years ago.
It was, at least.
Well, anyways, dude, go ahead and tell everybody who you are, what you do, where you're from, deep, dark, secret, or any other thing you care to share with the folks.
All right. So I'm Stephen Vogel. I do a lot of things, I suppose. If you ask me just like a one-word answer, I'd say trombone. So I'm a trombone player. I teach at a couple colleges, including Texas Lutheran University. Before the world ended, I was really enjoying like touring nationally with a group called the Rodney Marsalis Philadelphia Big Brass. And outside of that, I do some private teaching. I was doing a ton of gig work here in Houston. But now I do this, which is sitting in this room. And so these days I am a digital teacher. Like I teach, probably 40 hours a week online like this. And I'm going to go ahead and say a content creator. Because I'm recording so much right now.
You are, man.
And so that's what I do right now. Outside of that, I hang out with my dog and my beautiful fiance. And for the record, because I know obviously recording, I will say wife and I will say fiance, and they are the same person. The reason why I say that is twofold. So first, we were supposed to get married in May, but COVID ruined that.
Yes.
And second, just fiance is too many syllables.
A fiance is not meant for like longevity.
That's like, and we're gonna, because of COVID, we'll have been engaged for 2 years before we actually get married.
That's wild.
I've been carrying that word for a while. So hear me say both. They're the same person. I promise. I don't have anything weird going on. But then, I enjoy hanging out with her. I like video games. I like running. I like fishing. I like the outdoors. I enjoy things. My deepest, darkest secret, though, God, you come off.
Oh, hot, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Just gives,
It's 8:00 in the morning. My deepest, darkest secret is that as much as I love Texas, I was not born in Texas, and I'm the only person in my family who was not born in Texas.
That's right.
So if I had been born here, I think I was going to be something like a 12th generation Texan. But I was just on the wrong side of one of our borders over in New Mexico. So that's what we'll lead off with. Maybe as the coffee starts flowing, we'll get some deeper, darker secrets.
We start waking up. God bless. I don't. It's
Man,
been.
You're on that 4:30 in the morning.
I sure am, dude. And
this is sleeping in for you.
It never gets easier.
Yep.
It's always a pain in the butt to have to wake up at 4 a.m. and just kind of like contemplate life, being like, hey, if you weren't teaching, you could wake up like at any point in time.
Yeah.
It's like if you're, but then I think about it like also like the only other job that you've done that wouldn't force you to wake up this early is bartending. In which case, you're out until 3 in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and things like a salary and health insurance are really nice. So,
Super dope. I
yeah.
still don't feel like I take enough advantage of that health insurance thing because
Yeah.
I also just don't believe in doctors. And that's like a personal thing of,
All right.
and don't believe in doctors is a very loaded statement at this point in time.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're coming in hot right now,
What
but
I mean by that
okay. Okay.
is I don't believe, like, I don't think my body's ever falling apart, even though my body is very quickly falling apart. So therefore, there's no need for doctors.
I see.
Like,
I see.
I think I went to the doctor, like, I can only remember going to the doctor like 3 or 4 times growing up.
Yeah, we had very
Maybe.
different experiences, man. Very different experiences. But that's all right. So yeah, that's my deep dark secret. And I
Okay.
appreciate you making some time for me, early in the morning. I know obviously not the number one preferred time, but it
Hey,
it
man,
definitely makes life a little easier on my end.
I got you, man. And this, that being said, you're fixing to go to, where are you working at right now?
Yeah, so on Sundays I bartend for a brunch at one of my best buddies owns a bar out in Fulshear, Texas, which is not too far from where I live. I'm
Okay.
currently based out of Houston, and this bar is called the Growler Spot, and it's just a like really nice little bar.
Yeah.
It's like your neighborhood bar, with the best beer selection probably that you can get in Houston in terms of like variety for the number of taps. It's a 40 tap bar with like another 10 wine taps. It's really good.
Wow. Okay.
But the reason why I do it is I just really like people. I enjoy being around people, and obviously right now we don't get to be around a lot of people, right?
That's true.
So that's kind of like a nice, safe, more closed environment that there is room for some social interaction, and it
Okay.
just kind of creates a little bit of like normalcy,
Yeah, I
But I
feel you,
started
man.
I started really working there a lot when coronavirus hit, because it was like I feel like in the span of like a month, I lost like $20,000 of income.
I was about to say, man, you have always been one of the people that I know that flourishes in the gig economy,
Yeah, yeah,
and
and
you were one of the people I thought about as soon as the world shut down. I was like, my God, I hope he is holding
yeah.
it down.
It was and is weird. So I mentioned, right before the world shut down, things were going really well. I was in a place where I was probably playing about 100 to I'd say 130 services annually. And so when I say a service, that doesn't mean like a church service, but that
Yeah,
means, orchestra concert, brass quintet, maybe a church service, maybe little solo thing, whatever. But it was like a lot,
yeah,
that's playing at least a couple things every week, right?
yeah.
And so that was going really well. That was going really, really well. And I had made the decision in fall of 2019 to shift my focus a little bit from being what I used to consider a primary teacher and a secondary player to being a secondary teacher and a primary player. So I brought down
Gotcha.
the number of students that I was, holding. I did raise my rates
I
as a way
remember
to sort
you
of offset that.
the last time I was up there. We were talking about this
Yeah. And like,
this transition.
and it was going great. But obviously, yeah, that happened. And so it was an adapt and change sort of situation. I think within 2 weeks I was teaching online and just started working at a bar.
Yeah,
And is it what I got my master's to do? No. But is it, has it helped pay our mortgage and helped us to, live comfortably in a time when a lot of people aren't? Yeah. Yeah, it
yeah.
has.
I feel
So
you, man.
I have nothing but gratitude and gratefulness for the opportunity. And I try to remind myself of that when I last weekend, I think, yeah, it was last weekend. I worked like 28 hours at the bar, and like
Dang.
that was a lot after
Yeah,
a 40-hour work week. But I'm grateful that I have that, and I'm grateful that it is something that has helped sustain. And again, the people there are just like exactly the people that you want in your life.
They're just good people.
Good people. Exactly. Good people. But yeah, so that's what I got going on this morning.
Good stuff, man. And I'm sure we'll eventually get into trombone and or band, because that is the lives of which we live. But it is, common topic of conversation on the podcast. So I'd rather talk about something a little bit outside of that.
Sure. What's up?
Just in general, you have been one of the most ride or die homies so quickly, and like one of the first friends, if not the first friend, that's made at Texas State. Yeah. And just to think about that and how long it's been, we are coming up on 10 years, bud.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we met at orientation in 2011, so next summer.
Yeah,
a decade of ride or die,
which is wild.
Like our friendship has outlived the term ride or die.
Yeah,
because we're dating ourselves by saying that.
You're right. I don't know how.
It's all good, man. It's all good.
It's weird. Have you realized how old you are? Like yet?
I go back and forth, because I think that they're like one, I feel my age and older when I'm teaching.
Yes.
I mean, because, my students, similar to you, I teach high school and I teach college, right? And even in teaching college, I teach only undergraduates. So my oldest student's going to be, 22, right? Maybe 23. And that feels super far away.
It does.
That feels really, really far away. And then there's like this hard line that happens between, I feel like, anyone who was born in the 90s and anyone who was born in the 2000s.
Also feel that.
That starts to really like, oh yeah, like I'm older than I think I am. But at the same time, there are a lot of times where I'll sit there and I'll just look around at my life. Like most of my friends are older than me. Like in most of this circle that I run around with here, most of my friends are older than me, and not necessarily by like a crazy margin, but by between 3 and 10 years, and like my regular circle. And so yeah, there are times when I do feel like quite a bit younger because they're talking about movies from the 80s that they loved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. But in terms of a life sort of thing, I think if you're spending too much time, thinking about how old or young you are to handle a situation that you're in, then you're not equipped to handle that situation. Just like,
That's fair.
Like
I agree with that.
We're all as old mentally as we, I think, allow ourselves to be. And then, in a way physically too, right?
Yeah.
I like to say there's more miles on the engine than there used to be. And all, what that means is, like if I decide that I was going to engage in a night of celebration, like drink water, man. You
drink lots of water. Yeah. Make sure you're not booked up tomorher.
Yeah.
If you're really trying to
yesterday we were doing home improvement around the house all day. And, like 10 hours of just projects and moving. Yeah, man. When you buy a house, you'll understand.
Hopefully it's coming soon.
Good. We should talk about that. But yeah, I was paying for my Friday night all day. And I was just sitting there going like, man, this used to not hurt. and that's the whole, the whole adage there. There's more miles on the engine than there used to be. So
it's true, man.
In no way am I saying like, oh gosh, I'm an old man, but there are times when I feel really young and even inexperienced. And then there are times when I'm just like, I'm getting too old for this crap. And, I sort of live in between those two.
I always kind of forget because since I was in school for so long, mm-hmm. I saw like the distance, like I stopped recognizing the distance between me being there on my 6th year and like the freshman. I was just like, it's just another young kid that's trying to figure it out. Mm. And now that like I'm teaching, so like my first year, it was just like, oh, these are the same age as the kids that were freshmen like last year.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool. Like I know how old you are, and then I think about it, I'm like, nope, I'm almost 10 years older than you. That's weird.
Yeah, it's just it's one of those things that as we like we have to be self-aware, you know,
Yeah,
like we have to be self-aware because I think that a lot of people at certain there are certain points where people like structure, not only within their lives but within their social relationships, right?
yeah,
And like I think for kids, especially like high school and college kids, there's a part of them that wants that like, you know, cool, like chill young teacher. But at
yeah,
the same time, I think it's important for that dynamic for you to be able to put a hard stop on that
for sure.
and be like, no, this is not relevant. I am functioning in this role. But yeah, no, I imagine that that created a really unique perspective for you. I mean, there's probably I'd say 50-50 shot. There's a world in which I one day go back to school for a doctorate. And I'm envisioning that that would be me, you know, in my 30s.
Yeah,
And that's going to be me working in a studio with students who are 18 and 19.
for sure.
And you know that it's going to be wild. It's
I
going to
mean,
be
that was the case with. I'm trying to think of who was of that age when we were in school. Austin Tran. How?
no, Austin was, I would say, like he was in his mid 20s.
Okay.
So he had taught, I think, for a couple years, and then came back. And I don't know if I'm remembering that correctly, but I found that that was a way more common experience at UT.
Really?
Yeah, when I was doing my master's there, I found there were a lot of people, especially in the doctorate program, and especially on the jazz side, who
Mm,
had finished a degree and then had gone and played cruise ships for a bunch of years, or who had gone
yeah.
and like you know made it for real, and then said, "Cool, like I'm ready to a learn more, you know, b get in the college scene, or you know, see both." And so that I think that brings a lot of perspective because there truly are so many things that you cannot learn in school, and I don't mean that in a way to devalue school, but you know the real world experience and application of what it is we do is, you know, tremendous, right?
That's real,
Like
man.
there's so many things that you just cannot learn sitting in a classroom. And so I do think like as a university it's important to welcome and accommodate those students, those like
Hmm.
older students, what you know some people call non-traditional students. And again, that's easier to do in schools with a heavy graduate program.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, like someone that I don't know if you ever crossed paths with him, but when we were at Texas State, there was a guy named Brian Christensen, and Brian was a jazz saxophone player, and
Yeah.
he had done exactly what I just mentioned. He had gone out, he had played on cruise ships for a while, he had like done quite a bit. He was teaching college in San Antonio, and you know, decided it was time to get a master's degree.
Yeah.
And I think he was there studying with Dr. Haight. But anyway, yeah. So that the whole age thing, it's just multi-tiered because within our field, that's what's such a cool thing about music, man. Is like, you know, I can play with people that are younger than me. It doesn't happen that often, but it happens. And then I can play with people that have been playing as long as I've been alive. And
Yeah.
it's sort of like when you're with a good group or a good hang, that doesn't really matter a lot, which is
Yeah.
nice.
Like
But
who's
you
good
know,
is good.
when I was buying my first house, you know, we bought our house at, I don't remember if we closed when I was 26 or 27, but because it was right around my birthday. Uh,
I think it was 26.
I think it was 26.
I think
Yeah.
so.
I just don't remember the date that we bought it. But like I felt really young then.
Yeah.
You know, I felt really young
Yeah.
and really overwhelmed because you're going through a huge process. But yeah, you know, I think it's good to be aware of those things and to accept the positives on both ends, to accept the positives of being on the younger side in the grand scheme of life and being on the older side compared to where we were. And we learn to reevaluate ourselves and not think of like, I have to walk away from thinking about myself as being that age of like 20 to 24. Cause that was so close in terms of
Yeah.
recent memory, but so far away in terms of life.
Yeah. Damn, that's a good way of putting it. Is yeah. Yeah. Um, I like that. Sorry, you know, like you
No,
just
it's
kind of like
good.
you got me thinking on that statement. Um, so what's something else that we share as far as I would consider it a passion is food
Oh
and
yeah.
cooking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the last time, I was like that we were saying earlier that I was up there, you had invited me up for a crawfish boil, which
Yeah.
is, amongst other things, just like little things that make me sad that Corona took away from us. It was crawfish season.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. I love a good crawfish boil, man. Like their crawfish boils are like tailgating without sports. It's just like kind of a party, and it's like, hey man, what you doing? Come here, have some crawfish. Oh, have a beer. I've been to crawfish boils with like giant groups of people. I had no idea who they were, and like it's a very friendly environment.
It's always a good time.
Yeah, that was a learning experience. I don't remember if that was my second or third time doing it, but basically the crawfish, the Vogel House crawfish boil came from the fact that me and Jacob, who I believe you met,
I believe so,
are and were brewing a lot of beer, and where we had like 20 or 30 gallons, and there's no reason why two men need that much beer.
You don't.
And so we would just call a bunch of our friends and say, hey, we're gonna cook some food up. Please come drink all of this.
Yeah.
Bring your growlers or your whatever, fill them up. Like get these out of here.
Please take my beer.
Please. And it helps that we brew a pretty decent beer.
Yeah, that's an important factor. Yeah, actually,
it'd be a way harder sell if it was just trash. But yeah, so that was fun. The first part of quarantine, I was learning kind of how to dial in my smoker. I've got a little smoker in the back.
That's right.
Yeah. And so I was just learning how to dial it in. It's a little like electric smoker. It's nothing fancy. But that's really fun. I enjoy the process of doing the things almost more than I enjoy the eating. Like don't get me wrong,
behind that.
I love eating.
Oh, of course.
I love eating, but like I think that's the same reason I like brewing, because brewing is very process oriented.
Yeah.
And that's cool. That's for me, and I think you've known this about me since we were young, is like I'm a real like I got to be doing something person,
Yeah.
And so when I have something that's pretty involved, I like that. That's really nice for me. It's very hard for me to just sit. So if I can do something that is equal parts, like I'm working, quote unquote, smoking meat, crawfish boil, brewing beer, but there's a social component to it, that's perfect.
Best case scenario
for Steven. Yeah. But have you been like working on cooking?
I have been, man. I've been pretty adamantly cooking. Like that was a big thing over quarantine that I picked back up was there was me and there was like 4 other teachers in our age range, and all of us are out here in Temple living on our own, and it was just kind of super bleak for a little bit there, where we were just forced to sit inside. And finally I was just like, well, if nobody's gonna ever go anywhere, we could come to my place and I'll just make dinner and
we can not go somewhere together.
Exactly. So then that just turned into like, at first it was just kind of me and my homegirl Kelsey. We'd kind of bounce between our places. But then I was like, I'm going to get really into the food that I'm making. Mm-hmm. So let's just come over to my place and I'll cook once a week. Cool. And it was really cool, man. I don't know why I'm so into Italian food of all things.
Italian food, I think, is one of those places where I don't know if there's a ton of secrets in it, and in a way that is even more. It makes the allure even more, because like when I think about it, it's like like the range of spices that you use is pretty well documented, right? It's pretty well known, but like people literally travel from all over the world to try like a particular sauce.
For sure.
In Italy, you know what I mean? And it's like, I think that you can go down this rabbit hole because it's like, it feels so close. It feels so tangible. But you can be eating something and it's like, that's not it. That's not it. I mean, that to me, actually, that's like going back to the beer thing. Like the idea of making beer, it's like, it's actually not that hard. Like it's really not. But
Yeah.
there's great, amazing beer out there, and there's terrible, awful beer out there, and it's made through the same processes,
Yeah.
right?
Some of it's mass
And
produced.
well, some of it's mass produced, some of it's in my garage. But I guess what I'm saying is like it's close enough for you to conceptualize it.
Sure.
But there's so many tiny little variables and intangibles in there that you can spend a lot of time
Way too
working
much time
that.
on it.
So what sort of dishes like were you throwing down? What's the best thing that you have made in your Italian fixation?
Was probably the last thing I made. It was this creamy Tuscan chicken pasta,
Okay.
and it was so like the sauce was it came out perfect. Like it was such a simple sauce.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It was such a simple sauce. And it was the first time I made it. And I was like, man, I have no idea how this is going to come out. And then I tried it and I was like, damn, that actually worked.
I did it. Yeah.
that little fulfillment. And that's the joys and anxiety of cooking, I think, is I mean, any good cook is going to taste as you go. As far as flavor wise and all that, but until you plate up the final dish, you don't know if it's all going to make sense or if it's all going to work together. So when you do finally get to plate it up and you just like take that first bite, I'm just like, all right, that doesn't suck. It feels good.
Yeah, I know that feel.
But then I did this thing. I was just super in the creative mindset of what it would be like, and I still haven't figured out how to entirely word it. So follow me here.
Okay. I'm ready.
Black guy goes to Italy, learns like a couple weeks of Italian food, and then the dude he's learning from tells him to make a southern dish in the style of Italian.
So when you say southern,
like American Southern.
Right. So are you thinking? So you're saying that in a like what folks would, I think, consider like a comfort food sort of way?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So what I did is I mashed together chicken parmesan and fried chicken and macaroni and cheese and collard greens together.
Dude, that sounds like a food truck right there. That is a food truck that I would go to at a brewery after 2 beers.
You talking about food truck? It is still a very apparent dream in my person to have a food truck and run it outside a brewery.
There you go. And you'll never have to worry about spending your money on beer.
Honestly,
and that's the hardest part. So you'll be good.
Yeah. Well, that's something I never have to worry about, man.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. You're good.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so what I ended up doing is, usually the chicken, it's fried in like panko and the Italian herbs and spices. Decided to fry it, do a buttermilk fry instead, add buttermilk and flour. And then instead of doing something like, I think the traditional is spaghetti noodles, I did macaroni noodles. So just like little things here and there. And then instead of doing collard greens, I did Brussels sprouts with
love
prosciutto. So like collard greens, it's usually collard greens and ham hocks. So I was like, how do I upscale that?
Yeah, and that fat from the prosciutto though, like that's gonna go so well with.
It was nice, dude.
I think you need some fat with the Brussels sprouts.
Oh, absolutely.
But,
and
that sounds great.
That was the first time I had Brussels sprouts and cooked Brussels sprouts, and again,
really?
Yeah.
Welcome.
It was, that's not a common dish for your boy. So, it was interesting figuring out. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna make Brussels sprouts. How the hell do you cook Brussels sprouts?
Well, I'll tell you, if they came out in a way that you liked, then you had a better first experience than a lot of people.
I'm certain.
And a lot of people are really turned off by Brussels sprouts in general. They're just like, oh no, those are gross. Because I think like a lot of their first experience with them is just like steamed or like even boiled. and you know, because that's like an old world way of cooking them. But oh man, you get some real good heat on them, little char on them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just sautéed Brussels sprouts like that with a little bit of balsamic, some pepper, and if you wanted like a tiny bit of honey, and then
Ooh.
also take that also with like a honey siracha as well.
Oof.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because they're like a meaty, like textured
They
vegetable.
were, yeah, it was
Yeah,
such an interesting mouthfeel.
they carry flavor so well.
Yeah. But it, yeah, again, it came out well. I was very excited. Frying up chicken is such a pain.
Yeah, it's a labor of love, man.
shout
You're
out shout out to anybody that does that once a
mhm.
week or for funsies. Like, God bless. It is such a
Yeah,
painful process.
yeah, man.
But
Yeah.
I have, yeah, dude, I'm doing, and you know what, that dish in particular, I was like, yeah, I could do a food truck. But then I was like, how many pasta food trucks are there out there?
Well, in Temple, probably not many. So
I
maybe
think
that's
we've
maybe
got,
find your target market.
I think we've got 3 food trucks, period.
There you go. There you go, man. It's not about being the best one in the world. It's about being the best one where you are.
That's fair. That's very true. Now, which one would you say you care about more, or you like the intricacies more? Is brewing or cooking?
Oh, I'd definitely say brewing because brewing's like a month-long payoff.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like from the Saturday that I'm out there, like literally brewing the beer
Yeah,
to when it pours in my garage. That's like 3 weeks to a month. And then with some beers, you know, some of the really like big beers that we'll brew, that's 3 to 6 months of payoff.
God bless.
So that moment that you were talking about where you were like, oh, I finally get to taste it. Oh, I didn't do so bad. Like that, but 6 months. Uh, so yeah, I enjoy that. And also like I am so fortunate. Reagan, my fiance wife, is my wife fiance. She is just an amazing cook. Like
She is.
she has such a
Oh,
knack for flavors and even like inventive stuff, you know, stuff that, you know, her when she cooks something for the first time is just like, yeah, I think I got this. Whereas me when I cook something for the first time, it's like, ah. So I'm just very fortunate that she is really good at cooking. But now here's what I will say. So you know we're coming up on fall,
yes.
and we're coming up on fall, cooler weather, some things like that. But with that, it's also about to be hunting season, and something
Also
that's
true.
happened later in my life is you know I've become a pretty I won't say avid, but you know consistent hunter.
Yeah.
Uh, I enjoy spending time out there. I enjoy that whole process, and I'd love to talk about that if you want to. But
On a side note, I would love to go with you
okay, yeah, let's talk
because
about it, man.
I am
Well,
been
so
very interested in that side of things.
the cool part is like you know with hunting, I don't know anyone that is like hell yeah, I love killing stuff. I know they're out there, but I don't know those people,
I've
and
not
that's
met those hunters.
well, and I don't think that that's what it's about.
It's
You
not.
know, with every animal that I've harvested, it's never been like I get out there and I'm like, yeehaw! You know, it's like there's this moment of like sort of a solemn gratitude. Like I maybe this makes me weird, but like literally like we'll put a hand on a deer that has passed and just been like, thank you. Because this animal's about to feed my family, right?
Yeah.
And so then, but the cool part is from there, from that moment, we do 100% of everything that leads it to the table.
Yeah.
Like I don't drop it off somewhere for it to get processed or anything. Like I do everything. And so it's really cool when I pull that meat out of my freezer to just be like, this is the most organic thing that could ever have existed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then to prepare that with like love and tenderness and care because you're even more invested in how it made it to you. And so I'm really excited. I'm going out actually. I'm going to go out this week, later this week, and spend some time out on the ranch to, you know, get everything ready for the season. But then we'll
Gotcha.
also probably shoot an axis doe, and an axis is a species of deer that's not native to Texas, so you're able to shoot them year round.
It is native
Um,
to
Asia,
Asia. Yeah.
yeah,
Which
and
is
I think,
wild.
yeah, I was gonna, and interestingly enough, axis are beautiful, amazing, wonderful creatures, but they're very competitive for resources with our native species, whitetail. And axis can actually breed twice a year. That's their normal breeding cycle, whereas whitetail only breed once a year.
Gotcha.
And Axis are usually going to carry twins. And in some places where that competition for resources is really intense, some Axis herds have actually shortened gestation periods and can breed 3 times a year.
Jeez.
Yeah, so population management's really important there.
Yeah.
You know, because you want to make sure that our natural indigenous species have access to resources, and you know they're not endangered. But anyway, where I was going with all that is like I'm so looking forward to, you know, hopefully having a successful season, and then spending, you know, for a year, you get to just like prepare these really nice meals that you
Yeah.
can share with your friends and just be like, this is like the healthiest thing that I could serve you.
I did all of this,
Yeah.
and it's the most healthy. Please
Well,
enjoy.
I especially now with like the whole like, you know, I'm making my own beer thing, and it's good enough for me to like actually want to serve to people. And now it's like, well, you know, we we didn't make this meat, but we almost did, right? We at least brought it here.
Close to making it
Yeah,
as
we took it from the
as you
hoof to the
can.
table. I would love to eventually get into, probably not completely sustainable gardening, but like heavy gardening. You know what I
Dude,
mean?
I've been thinking about that a lot as
Yeah,
well.
to where it's just like I can source most of the food that I want
Myself.
myself, you know,
Yeah.
from myself. And you know, I that gardening would be a whole, you know, whole place, a whole can of worms to learn about. But gosh, I'd love that. I'd really love
Dude, I really started thinking like trying to get into it, but then I was like, you're still in an apartment, dog. You can't garden here.
Yeah. Yeah, that I transitioning into a house. We transitioned into a house like 3 years ago, and it changes your life. It 100%
Yeah.
changes your life. And I recognize that that move's not for everyone. You know what I mean. But like it completely opens up your mind to a lot of possibilities and hobbies and things like that that I think otherwise you could not do simply from space limitations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it was cool to just be like, yeah, we have an extra bedroom and make a studio.
Yeah. It's like I do have an extra bedroom, and I turned it into a studio, currently where I'm at. But also when I was like, I'm gonna get back into woodworking, I don't have a garage. I'll do everything on the patio. Oh wait, it's not a covered patio. When it's gonna rain, I have to put all these tools back inside. And then I just kind of looked at like, and right now still, I think I did it twice, like back and forth. I was like, I'm not going to do that. And so a lot of projects ended up getting kind of sidelined, and it's just it's frustrating, like wanting to do things like have a workshop, having a garden, having somewhere I could work on a car, and I am limited to the space of a apartment complex, which is just a big sad.
Yeah, but not forever.
Not forever.
Not forever.
Your boy's got to figure his credit score out. It's not it.
All right. Yeah, I mean,
college times were not good to me.
That was one of the, you know, something that I'm working on right now is like a project that I'm working on, and this will probably be like a 2021 sort of thing.
Okay.
It's creating, I'm not going to call it a course because it's not going to be something that's like sold for money, but creating some content in a highly visible place about financial literacy for college students. And creating resources that can help decode a lot of that. Because you raised such a good point, right? You know, like I'm ready for this next phase in my life. And from an income standpoint, you're the most stable you've ever been.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And from a strictly income standpoint, you know, knowing that Texas pays teachers pretty well, you know, considering the national average, right?
Yeah.
Like, we get paid pretty well. You know, you financially could afford a house.
Yep.
But there's that whole like credit score thing, right? Well, why is my credit score low? Well, you know, when I was a kid, I did these things and I never knew the implications. I never knew the ramifications of that because no one was equipped to tell you that. Like the thing that blows my mind, and you know these people just like I do, is we have colleagues who 1 or 2 degrees, sometimes 3 degrees, go by, and then they're just now entering the workforce and are carrying between 60 and 100K in debt.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, I get it. Like, you got to do what you got to do. But that is just crippling.
Yeah.
I think the whole reason I went to Texas State in the first place was it was monetarily a really smart decision.
Mhm.
And I've always been super money conscious. I didn't grow up with much. Like you've met my parents. It was all very, very middle class. I think when my parents were still together, the most money they ever made collectively ever was they might have broke $100,000 like one year. And don't get me wrong, that's a lot of money. But with a house and 2 cars and 2 kids and insurance and all the stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like there was still plenty of times when it was like, yeah, like we can't have that. We're gonna eat and everything's gonna be fine, but like no, you can't have that thing. And that wasn't, in no way was I deprived as a kid. Like that's not what I'm saying. But I wasn't one of those people who entered college with a college fund
Yeah.
and all those sort of things,
Yeah.
right? My parents did everything they could to help me be successful, but they let me know in high school, like, hey, make sure that you take care of business, because if you want to go to college, you're going to have to, be on it. And so I went to Texas State because I got a lot of academic money.
Yeah.
I got a lot of academic money, and did I grow up wanting to go to Texas State? No, but when it came down to like the practical application of it, I was like, yeah. Yeah, and it also helped. Martin McCain, the trombone professor there, was and is an amazing teacher and player, and it just worked out. But I look at where I exist now in the financial plane, and I think that's one of the most important things I ever did.
I agree, man.
Because I did take out one loan in my master's. I took out a loan for $20,000 when I first started my master's, because I didn't know. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to work or what. I'm moving to a different city, so like some of the stuff I have might be gone. I don't know. And thankfully, I was able to get through that first year and go, oh, I can just pay for my master's. Because I was gigging and teaching and working a lot. But like even that one loan, even that one $20,000 loan, like that's still a payment. I think because it's on a 10-year note, I think my minimum payment's like $250 or something like that.
Probably, man.
And that's that's not an insignificant amount of money. That's a little less than my healthcare premium.
That's more than my car payment.
It's more than my car payment. It's that's one of those things that when the goal of this project is to create some stuff for kids that are just about to go into college or are just now in college. That's like, hey, like let's talk about what this loan means. Let's talk about how much of this loan you need. Okay. Let's learn what a work study program is. Because the thing that I found the longer I was in school was there are so many resources that are there.
Yeah.
If you know about them.
If you know how to get to them.
If you know how to get to them, if you know they exist, all that sort of stuff.
It's a big thing for me is just knowing they existed.
Mm-hmm.
Was and what always kind of trips me out is the fact that I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship because my father was in the military.
Mm-hmm.
So my school was my hours were paid for. Mm-hmm. So, but I ended up having to get loans pulled out because of excuse me. I had to get loans pulled out because of like general living stuff and
rent,
and
food
and all that, right? Like even though I was working as much as I did, mm-hmm. When I was finally working enough to kind of cover costs, mm-hmm. I was then out of scholarship. So then like the amount of money I was making did not balance out to the amount of money that I needed to pay for everything. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm one of those people that definitely has way too much money in loans and still trying to figure out how to pay it off. And
but you're in a majority.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like within people in our field. And that's something that, that's another thing that I think we need to be really sensitive about when we talk to these students, especially students going into music, is like, a lot of people are going to ask you to do a 5-year degree.
Yeah.
And that 5th year, man, that's hard, because in that 5th year, that block student teaching year, you can't really have a job. Yeah. Because you have a job, but that job doesn't pay, but you still have to pay tuition. Mm-hmm. And most scholarships have run out. And what the hell am I going to do? Because no one's going into music education to get rich.
Nope.
If you are, sorry, but change majors now. And so that's a place that I feel really strongly about, because I know that information is out there, but I think that the way that it is presented a lot of times
just not accessible.
Well, it just misses the target audience.
Yeah.
It misses the target audience. Like I have been amazed at this little, this little practice channel thing I started on Instagram, right?
Which is wild how quick it came out and how big it got.
We're up to like 600 followers and it's like 2 weeks old.
That's ridiculous.
Well, I think the thing, so my whole thought process behind this was, where are people consuming media?
Yeah.
And you can go on YouTube and you'll find some amazing educational material that has been online for 10 years and has like 1,000 views.
Yeah. And
you're just like, what, why? This is so good. And it's like, oh, well, you know what? It's an hour long and it's in a dated format. It's one long video. And that's not how a lot of us are consuming stuff anymore. And it's especially not how young people are consuming stuff anymore. Like, you think about your students, you think about my students, they are consuming more in 30-second to 1 minute clips than they are in anything longer than that, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the whole inspiration behind it was, okay, let's create some really good, like, quality pedagogical advice that also is going to be easily digestible in a 1 minute format. And then for me as a teacher, that creates such a great challenge.
For sure.
Okay, explain this concept, define it, tell them how to do it, and demonstrate it in under a minute. Go. And so that's been a really, really fun, sort of thing. So I'm not saying I'm going to do like 1 minute tips for financial literacy, but maybe, maybe that's the way.
I don't see why not.
Because again, thinking like Instagram, TikTok, things like that is millions of views, billions of views happening every day. Right. And so if we can populate that space with really helpful information, that someone can consume while they're scrolling and looking at, cute dog videos, and just have that come up in their feed and be like, oh, you know what? I'm going to learn the difference between a subsidized and unsubsidized loan real quick. And it only took me 45 seconds.
Yeah.
That is so much. I think that's so valuable. So that's something that I'm passionate about and that I'm working on and getting into that space. That 1 minute practice tips channel is about to expand a lot, because right now it's me in my room, but I am expanding to a roster of guest contributors, and so it's going to be people from different walks of life, different players and stuff like that. And then like I said, I really do want to start like a financial literacy section as well.
I dig it, man, and similar to what I said earlier, you have always been a beacon of hustle.
Well, thanks, man.
And that's one of the things that I've appreciated about just you as a person and as a friend, of just like this constant reminder of like, no, you could do more. Well, you could do a little bit more.
I think I was thinking about this morning. One of the more powerful things that's happened to me in the past year, I was on tour up in the Northeast. This was like back in February, when touring was still a thing. And I was talking with someone who at the time was, I didn't know him that well. I kind of knew him, but he was one of like my musical inspirations, because he was he still is, but like very thoughtful, very well-spoken, great player. His name's Gabriel Langford Rice. And he is a professor of trombone at Boston University. He's an amazing freelancer, great bass trombone player, whatever. And we were talking, and we had like a 6-hour car ride together. We drove from New Jersey to upstate New York, and we're listening to music, and we're doing all this and just talking. I was talking about a point in my career where I was just not doing so well with my playing, with my perception of myself and all that. It's just, oh yeah, sounds like you had a case of the should-haves. And I've been thinking about that a lot during this whole quarantine thing. It's easy to fixate on like, well, I should be touring the US right now. I should be playing gigs and this, that, and the other, and to just exist in that negative space. So I've tried for a long time, but especially now, to focus less on what should be and focus more on what could be. And I think that's where that term that you just said right there, like, the hustle sort of thing, I think that's what that actually is. Like, like what could exist, X, Y, and Z. Okay, what do I need to do to get there?
Yeah.
And that's actually like right now I'm touring again from my office, a presentation of what I call creating opportunities in a digital world, which is the nuts and bolts of establishing a professional network within your musical discipline, whether that's teaching, recording, performing, anything, private lessons, in breaking down, because I think a lot of people just sort of like leave blanket statements out there like, oh yeah, that guy hustles, that guy's always working, that guy's always grinding. But like, what does that mean? What is the behind the scenes view of that guy who's getting all those gigs, or that guy who's got 80 students, or that girl who is in the studio nonstop? What does that look
It's
like?
the entirety of that statement, and how did
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so I've given that presentation at Columbus State University in Georgia, Grambling State University in Louisiana. I'll be giving that presentation at a couple more schools before the year's over, and I just submitted that for Team EA actually.
I saw that, man.
That's
super dope, and
we'll see if it gets picked
you,
up.
Man. Yeah.
We'll see if it gets picked up.
That is on the bucket list of things to do, as well as be a presenter at Team EA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think part of it is like you just gotta. Yeah, we all have stuff to offer, right?
Yeah,
we all know stuff, and so it's sort of learning a way to, why is this stuff valuable, and how can I present it in a way that helps people.
The topic that I always thought would be not the easiest, but just in general, man, percussion just doesn't get talked about enough, and the vast styles, if you will, and the legitimacy of indoor drumline has not been accepted into the state of Texas yet, which is frustrating, because there's a high level of difference. That's such a multifaceted activity that can help the program if done well, and not just like an excuse to continue to just do marching bands in the spring semester. You can use it to allow different levels of musicality. The students get a different level of performance because it is such a more intimate setting, and you have to think a little bit more about the entire line of the show, as opposed to marching band, where you can get away with doing 3 different movements and just kind of, if you march well, play well,
right?
It's good. Like if you march well, play well in indoor, like you're not guaranteed to like still be good, because so much of the show is articulated on general effect and storyline and stuff like that.
Right.
So, I don't know.
Well, no, I mean, it's awesome that you have that passion for it, because clearly you do. I mean, there's a reason I'm not a band director. I respect the hell out of band directors. But for me listening, it's just like, man, that sounds like a lot of work. And I'm thinking about like, because when I teach at programs, I'm usually teaching in like a 6A program, right?
Yeah.
Like out here in Houston, I teach at all 6A high schools. And I think about what those marching seasons look like, right? And those are exhausting, man. God, I've had the privilege of teaching at some programs that go to Grand Nats, every other year, and make state at least semis like every other year. And,
it's hard, man.
It's hard. Those kids,
it's hard.
By the time they get to the end of that season, they are just worn down. And the directors are too, because for every hour that kid's putting in, the director's putting in too, right? Yeah. So that's just one of those things where it's like, I completely agree with everything that you're saying. When I was in high school, I did winter guard, so like I threw rifle for 2 years. Yeah, man. Yeah, it was fun. It was a really good time. But like, I distinctly remember that being like the stepchild of that program, because they're just like, oh, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and I'm so tired. And I don't blame my directors for that at all.
It's really hard, and this is going to be a weird year, because I would just like timeline wise for for my educational blah 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 for Temple was I was going to do every other year indoor, just because I also think percussion ensemble is a very important part of being a percussionist. So I was going to take this year off, but now they actually just canceled. They didn't cancel, but it's going to be virtual, so I don't really know what that looks like, or how that's going to be, or even so, like how many schools are going to let indoor programs use their facilities because of the current nature. So as of right now, I'm not doing indoor at all this spring semester, and that'll be the first time since in 9 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the whole time I've known you, you've been involved with an indoor program, whether you were participating or teaching.
Exactly. So it's gonna be like, I was talking to one of my kids about this earlier. I was like, bro, I'm gonna have nights and weekends. Yeah. Every single night and weekend.
Oh gosh, I mean, I'm adjusting to the concept of a Saturday.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't really realize how many weeks of the year I was working 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And if you ask me like, oh, do you consider your gigs work? I'd be like, no, I'm having fun. But like, sometimes that's a gig that has you out of the house for 10 hours.
Yeah.
With drive time and playing and, time in between sets and everything. That's absolutely work.
Yeah.
That's absolutely work. So, I mean, it is scary to stare yourself down with free time sometimes. And I think that's why we put so much stuff on our plate, right?
Yep.
It's easier to just plod forward. But if you can get past those little bit of scaries there, man, I've truly enjoyed having a little bit more time. I still think I'm just about as busy as I possibly can be, but it's a different kind of busy now.
Yeah, as you do. And actually, this is one of the questions I did want to get to, was because I knew you and I are so similar, and like we seldom have downtime, and if we do have downtime, we make sure to fill it up with something else. So what was the beginning of quarantine like for you, and losing all the gigs on a drop of a dime, basically? Like, what did that do mentally to you, for you?
One, like, I think we talked about this before we started recording, but that wasn't that long ago, but that feels so long ago.
Oh God.
That almost like if you asked me about a date in March 3 years ago, I might be able to tell you more about it than this past March. But I mean, it was, so for me, I deal with anxiety or panic or whatever by going into overdrive.
Yep.
And that's just sort of the way that I've always done it. And I'm not saying that's healthy. If at best that's a coping mechanism, right?
Yeah.
Like with if you want to talk about like generalized anxiety disorder, that is a mental illness, and like it should be treated seriously and as such, because it can absolutely lead to other things. I've struggled with that, coupled with occasional bouts of depression for most of my adult life, and so don't hear me saying this as like, well, I just worked harder, because that's not it, right? That's not it at all.
Yeah.
But what it was like was, I immediately said, okay, I need to make sure I have something to fall back on. Because I think I was sitting there thinking that this was going to be, for a little bit, kind of like swine flu was, if you remember when we were in high school.
Yep.
Like some parts of the United States shut down for like 3 days, right?
Yeah.
Like a week. We got a week off from school back in 2010 from swine flu. I don't remember if it was 9 or 10, but it was somewhere in
something like that.
And it was this thing that none of us were really aware of as kids, and it was just like, oh yeah, that's a thing that's happening. Like, okay, whatever. And then it was over, right? And part of me was thinking that this was just going to be like the grown-up version of that. We're like, oh, okay, we're going to have a month, and then it'll be done.
Yeah.
And so there was, I think, this continued sense of optimism that at some point, something's going to happen and it's going to turn around and all this. But I think after about 2 weeks, I kind of had that moment of like, oh no.
It's going sideways real quick.
Yeah, like this isn't getting better. It's actively getting a lot worse. And watching the gigs roll away actually became very, very minor compared to watching like the world change, right?
Yeah.
And I had a couple experiences early on. A guy that I had played with in February died in March from COVID.
Damn. Did he
Like,
really?
and yeah, and that was at the beginning of everything.
That was the very
Like
beginning of it.
right away
God
died.
bless.
And yeah, and that was tremendously sad. You know, like I played Hanson's Romantic Symphony with you like a month ago, and he's a good trumpet player, and he passed away unfortunately. And then I watched gosh, I think also in March, maybe in April, Ron Wilkins. Suddenly is on a ventilator, and I
Yeah.
had known Ron since I was in high school. I took
Yeah.
lessons. He was a high school junior, and he's been a musical, inspiration and someone I've looked up to for a long time. And suddenly he's on a ventilator, and thank God he's okay, and he's teaching at Texas State now. Shout out,
Shout out. Is
to
it
the
really? I didn't know that.
yeah. Yeah, Professor Hurt retired after many long years of serving the institution.
I did not
Yeah,
know he retired either.
yeah,
Wow.
and
Okay.
so Ron got brought on and is doing jazz and is helping teach the trombone load.
That's awesome.
They've
Shout
got
out.
30 trombone majors.
Jeez.
Yeah. So for me,
Trombone City always staying,
Yeah.
running.
it does.
That depth chart runs hard.
It does, man. It does. That's the fantasy team you want.
Seriously.
But yeah, so anything that got lost financially was pretty quickly overshadowed by like the mortal implications of what I felt was going on.
That's interesting. That's an interesting take on it, because I didn't have that same shared sentiment. Like, I still am not entirely sure I know anybody that's directly passed away that like I've come into contact with, which is both a blessing as well as like this weird detachment from the entirety of the matter. And it's for you to like kind of see that basically right away.
Yeah, no, it was instant. And what was what continues to be so challenging about all of this, right, is that for any of this to work, we have to not be selfish.
Yeah.
But our nature, our most basic instinct compels us to be selfish. And I don't mean selfish in the sense that we, I don't mean selfish in the sense that like, well, you can't tell me what to do. But I mean selfish in the sense is like, we're gonna look out for our best interest based on the information that we have, right?
Yeah.
And our best interest obviously can be expanded when you consider having a family, a wife, a whatever, right? Your circle, whatever that is, even just like your closest friends. My best interest can be our best interest, but generally speaking, I'm going to act in the best interest of the things that are most dear to me. And what has happened so quickly is that you realize that what matters to people is drastically different from person to person to person to person to person. And that's been something that I still can't really wrap my head around. And that's been something that I've still really struggled with, because there are people who I respect and admire and love a lot, who I work with, who I'm related to, who I have encountered in so many places that have a completely different view of this whole world and pandemic and everything, because of the fact that they have never had to deal with that.
Yeah.
And now I'm sitting in a situation where some members of my family are sick with the virus, and one's in a hospital, and it's one of those things where it's like, I never want anyone to have that. I never want anyone to sit in that position and like deal with that. But at the same time, what is it going to take for everyone else to have a moment of realization, to
jump on board, if you will?
Yeah, because especially working at a bar, and I mentioned that bar is in Fulshear, Texas, which is like, it's a suburb of a suburb outside of Houston. It's still like there's still people with acreage and that have horses and stuff like that. It's a small town.
Yeah.
And it's a small town that's getting absorbed by a big town. But anyway, and you just hear people talk, and we have some people that come in and they work in the ICU at Memorial Hermann, and they're like, guys, like, holy shit. And then you have other people that walk in and are like, these masks are useless. And, this is all the Democrats. And I'm not going to bring politics into it at all.
Of course.
But what is just wild to me is that we live in the exact same world. We're in the same little beer bar right now. And our perceptions of reality are completely different. And so with all of that, and that was a really long-winded, way of me sort of talking about my initial experience with this, but I've been so much less interested in what's happening with my gigs. Cause let's be real, like gigs is me making fart noises into a piece of metal, right? Like that's all it is. It's nice it's nice when you're getting paid to do it, but like I took on more students. I started working at a bar. We're fine. Actually, I'm in a better place right now financially than I was a year ago.
Really?
Like significantly. Yeah.
Wow, awesome,
I have worked my ass off. But that was because I figured now would be the time, right? Like now would be the time to do it. So I don't care. Like it's fine. What has troubled me the most and what I still have not been able to wrap my brain around is the human response from community to community, state to state, country to country, continent to continent, because we've seen people in other parts of the world get it right. I have a lot of friends that are living in Europe, that are living in Asia, that are musicians that are starting to get parts of their lives back. Their orchestras are playing together again, like they're playing shows again. And we don't have that experience here. We don't have that experience here. And that's because of a number of factors, but more than anything, it's because we have a bunch of different realities that everyone's living in right now. Yeah. And that's crazy. Like that's what I spend more time thinking about than anything else. It's just, how did we get to this point that there is one thing that is perceived a million different ways, but it doesn't care about any of those ways that you perceive it, right? It doesn't care. It's going to infect you one way or the other.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could tell you accurately how it feels or how it's affected me, because I do think that for a lot of us, COVID is going to be sort of like a trauma. For some of us on our physical states, but I think for most of us in some way on our mental states, whether you are someone who's struggling with the emotional aspect of isolation, you're someone who's struggling with the emotional aspect of like, I feel very ineffective in my job, as a teacher. I'm 100% digital. I am not seeing a student this year.
Really?
And I struggle with feeling effective. I struggle with feeling like I'm doing what these students need and that I'm giving them what they're paying for. And you know what I mean? Like, it's really hard. And then not seeing our families, not engaging in, in things. I push my wedding back, like all this stuff is, they're little traumas, right? Little traumas here, there. And like physically, when you deal with a trauma, you have to allow time for recovery and rehab, right? And mentally within like the world of therapy and counseling and things like that, like dealing with the trauma is something that, a lot of people seek professional help for.
Yeah.
And so now we're all sharing in this weird, huge collective trauma that I think for a lot of us, we have not sat down to try and deal with because you just can't right now. Like you with the way it has been laid out for us as most American people is we need to keep working. We have to keep paying our bills. We have to keep doing this and that. So there hasn't been time to sit down and really reconcile all this. And so I'm really interested, obviously I can't wait for a world in which we have, some twinge of normalcy, but I'm really interested to see what our collective psyche is as we walk out of this.
I am hopeful that it's on the good side. Realistically, I don't know, man. It doesn't feel like it's going to go well.
I have no idea. I don't. And in a way, this has been maybe one of the best things that could have ever happened to me from a personal standpoint in terms of reconciling what I've struggled with for my whole adult life, which is anxiety. Yeah. Because anxiety comes from a place of feeling like you're out of control, right? Mm-hmm. Imagining worst case scenarios and seeing them all play out in your head. And I don't have to imagine them. I get to watch them.
Yeah.
are happening.
You're currently living
So
it.
so all the times that I spent sitting there going like, oh well, what if the gigs stop? What if someone, what if they stop calling me? What if there's a, what if the oil market crashes? Because we live in Houston. What
Yeah.
if the oil market crashes? Like, what am I going to do? And it's like, well, you're doing it. You're doing it right now. The gig stopped and the oil industry crashed, and you're making it work.
Currently living in it, and
Yeah, and that's something that my mom told me this all the time, still does, and it still makes me mad when she tells me this. But when this was when I was a young adult, and I'm still a young adult, but wow, like, how do you do this? Like, how do you get through this stuff? She goes, well, you just do. Like, you just do. You just
yep.
get through it, and either you get through it or you don't. And if you get through it, great, you did it. And if you don't get through it, oh well. Either you're still living or you're dead. And if you're dead, you don't have to worry about it anymore. And if you're still living, then you still have a chance to do something about it. And I think that now more than ever, I like identify with that. And
Understand that.
I feel
That makes sense. Yeah.
we do what we have to. And my most sincere hope for our nation is that at some point, we get a clear picture of what it is we need to do as a people, all people, from every side, from every color, from every religion, from everything, and really just understand, like, this is what we need to do right now to make this stop. Because we're gonna continue, I think, down this path, because when there's not a coronavirus, there'll be something else. And when there's not a third civil rights movement, there's going to be something else. And when there's not a war of aggression in Southeast Asia, there's going to be the Middle East, or there's going to be Russia or something. You know what I mean? There's always going to be something. So none of these things are good excuses to be terrible people.
Yeah.
And so we have to put the excuses away and the distractions away, and like take a deep, hard look at our national identity and decide, is this who we want to be? And I think every single person, if they looked down the national identity, would go like, no, that's not what I want to be. But then what they want to be would be different, right? Like, if you look at where we're at right now, I think 100 out of 100 people, 99 out of 100 people will go like, no, this isn't what I want.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would you change about it? How would you make it better? What does better look like for you? I'm like, let's start having those conversations, as opposed to pointing at someone and saying, you're the reason things are bad. Like, let's identify what good is, and let's figure out how to get there.
People's egos, man. And seldom do people want to check themselves and realize that they've been wrong their entire existence, or what they've.
I don't think it's wrong.
Wrong was the wrong word, but what they thought was right wasn't taking them down the path that they
Right.
Ultimately wanted to get to.
I had a really interesting experience. I in June, I drove out to Colorado and hung out in the mountains for like 10 days. Nice long trip.
Awesome.
Didn't see anyone except for, Reagan and my sister and her girlfriend and my parents. And that was it.
Awesome.
Like, just stayed in a little cabin up there, hiking every day, fishing. It was awesome. But I was driving back, and, you drive back, and when you drive from, I drove from like central Texas up through Colorado. You can go like the El Paso route and up, or you can go like kind of more across Texas and then hit northern New Mexico and up.
Mm-hmm.
So I was coming through, and we were going to stay a night in Lubbock, and so I drove from that like the southwestern part of Colorado through Lubbock, and so you're driving through some really interesting country. You're on these highways for hundreds of miles, and you see 4 houses, 4 ranches, whatever, like really spread out, right? And I had this moment where I was thinking, I was like, man, if I spent my whole life here, right? This is where I grew up. This is where I went to school. I run a ranch here. This is my life. Why would I care about so many of the things that me, like Steven, in this life right now cares about?
Yeah.
And 2, how would I know to care? And I think that's just that comes down to our experiences, and one of the things that person who lives in that place and we're not going to have a lot of shared experiences, right? We're human. That's helpful. That's a good starting place. I bet we both like beer. That's helpful. That's a starting place. But
safe one, yeah.
But I look at this coronavirus thing, right? And it's become possibly the single most divisive thing that has existed in the time I've been alive, right? In the time we've been alive. I wasn't alive. I wasn't alive in Vietnam, but it seems like, that period of protest was incredibly divisive. Obviously, the civil rights movement in the 1960s as well. But like this thing actually had the opportunity to be a great unifier.
It did.
And I think you saw that in like the first couple of weeks, right? Like in the first couple of weeks, there was this whole push, like, we're in this together, we're working through this together, we're going to make this work, everything's going to be fine, we just got to do this together. And that completely fell apart, because it got co-opted and it got turned into a platform.
Yeah.
And that makes me really sad, because I think that was a place where we could have, in the way that people romanticize the American spirit, we could have actually utilized that, right? And been like, we're stronger in this together, one nation, we can make it through this. And we really blew our chance at that. We really, really blew our chance at that. And I don't know if we get another shot at that. At least not on this topic. At least not in this crisis, in this place. I just don't know that we get another shot at that. And that really makes me sad. It is I don't want to call it a missed opportunity, because there's nothing about this virus that should be considered, an opportunity.
Yeah.
But that was just a place where we could have found some good in a horrible thing, and we just added to it instead.
It's tough, man.
Yeah.
It's tough being in this. Feels cliche, but it was just like in our age range, to have to deal with it like as a professional, but then also like know that the repercussions of people older than us, we're gonna have to then deal with again, in who knows how for how long, or when we will we'll see the ramifications of the choices that have been made for us, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot to think about, man.
It's a lot to think about, and what's wild, and this is something that I think everyone could learn from, regardless of how you identify or who you identify with or anything like that, is if you were to look at America in the grand scheme of history, we are just an infant in terms of his historical staying power, right? Look at it. I love to watch like History Channel documentaries and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, dude.
I like to nerd out on that.
Love me a good documentary.
Look at some of these Central Asian empires. Look at some of the empires that ruled across early Europe. Look at some of the things that have happened, with obviously Greek, Greco-Roman history, and like we read about those in books. They lasted longer than we have. We haven't made it to 300 yet. This democratic experiment is not a guarantee. It's not foolproof. It's not perfect by any means, and it can end at any time. Because if you look again at history, more civilizations have fallen than have stood. Yeah. And more governments have fallen than have stood, more regimes have fallen than have stood. And I think that this sort of this, sometimes we lose sight of that, right? Because this is the way we've always done it. Well, okay, this is the way we've done it for the last 100 years. 100 years is nothing.
100 years is a blink of the eye.
Yeah, in the scale of recorded human history, right?
Yeah.
And so I hope that at some point there is a shift back to observing our place in the grand scheme of things, as opposed to our place in our immediate environment, because it's hard to reconcile that. Like, I say that from a very comfy suburban home in Katy, Texas, right? Like my experience is obviously quite different than someone who, maybe is living in, who's living in Chicago right now. in government housing, or someone who's living in, you know, the nicest, most lavish part of LA, right? Like we all have just different experiences going on with this. But again, that unifying experience is like, we can look at this historically and go, wow, the 27 years that I've been on this planet, pretty insignificant.
Yeah.
You know, like what, nothing that I am doing in this moment, in this time, is more important or less important, except for the importance that I give it. Right.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like if we were able to do that, we'd be less selfish. You know, like,
Yeah,
again, that kind of goes back to that, what I said earlier with that, you know, our nature is to be selfish, right? Our nature is to be selfish because all we can focus on is our existence in this moment.
Yeah.
Right. And that's our lizard brain. You know, I call like that primordial part of you that's like, its job is to keep you alive, right? Your lizard brain.
Yeah.
Job is to keep you alive, you know. But the nice part about us is, as a species, is, you know, we evolved to have more than our lizard brain, right?
Supposed to, at least.
Supposed to. And, you know, so I guess what I would hope is that we can look outside the lizard brain a little bit, and we can use that nice big brain that we've got in here, and, you know, say, hey, like, if I really want this country to be great and to last a long time and to do all those sort of things, like, what can I do now to ensure that for the future? You know,
Yeah.
What can I do for my kids' to make sure that this is a good place to be? And I'm hopeful that our generation is going to embody that, and I'm hopeful that the generations after us will embody that as well. And, you know, who knows? There will be other things that happen in our lifetime that give us the opportunity to unify, and it's just a matter of whether or not we do it.
Yeah. And the thing that I've been kind of saying to myself and to other people, it's like, bro, we're on a rock hurling through space at 96,000 miles an hour through a shooting gallery of asteroids, constantly dodging sun flares. You're going to be all right.
Yeah, like probably you'll be fine.
Probably going to be fine.
Like I think
also just be nicer to people.
We used to say in college, like, I probably won't die, right?
Yeah.
I probably won't die. Like, and there's, I was going to say sagely wisdom in that. But I think that, again, like, there's a level of awareness contained in that is really, really significant, and has the power to be a super, super useful tool for all of us. But self-awareness requires introspection, and a lot of people don't want to engage in that. It's
hard to look at yourself, man.
It's hard to look at yourself.
It's getting past, again, that ego of thinking, like you said, this is what we've done in the past, so why not keep doing it? And it's really hard to, the analogy of climbing a mountain and realizing that you're on the wrong side. Oof. And like, and just saying, like, okay, I could either continue on this peak, which isn't the actual mountain. I can stay where I'm at, or I can climb back down and climb up the right one. Wow. And it's hard to.
I've actually never heard that.
Really?
Yeah, but I mean, gosh, there's a lot of good stuff in that.
Yeah, man.
Because you don't want to sit there and invalidate all the hard work that you did to get up to that mountain.
Yeah.
But this is the wrong peak. I'm in the wrong place. Like, am I going to go up to the top now just because I'm stubborn?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. And good Lord, if this isn't something that I've missed with you, man, is this chance to have these types of conversations. I think it all started, I think the first time, like, we kind of really got into it like this was those Christmas.
Oh yeah. When we would hang out for, like, we'd have like a week where we were chilling, man. Yeah. I mean, that it was fun to have you with, the family those years. I know. Obviously, you were wishing that you were with your family, but they had moved.
Yeah.
And so no, that was great. But I mean, I think the cool thing about what you're doing with this project is, and this is, I think, why podcasts in general are like one of the bright spots still remaining in the hellhole that is our media landscape, is that there's so few places where conversations happen.
Yeah.
like really, really, really like conversations, you know, and even now as we become more diametrically opposed politically and socially and financially, and you know, everything that we get fed tells us like, you are this, someone else is that, we don't like that, right? There are so few places to engage in real conversation, and real conversation doesn't have to mean solving all the world's problems, but it can mean, you know, like being a little vulnerable. It can mean being in a place where you're willing to learn. You know, I've got two good friends who recently started hanging out with, and we go fishing together. We you know, just sort of hang out, you know, shoot the breeze. And politically, we have very little in common, and in the way that we grew up, we don't have a lot in common. But it's three good people. It's like, it's three good people. And when I say politically, we don't have anything in common. Like I will say that, like, you know, while we might feel differently about fiscal policy, while we might feel different about like the role of the government, like things like that, like at a base level, we agree on human rights, we agree on equality and stuff like that. I do want to make that disclaimer. But you know, what I love about that is, like, you know, we were out fishing, I think 2 weeks ago. We were fishing till like 1 a.m. and just talking about everything. You know, talking about literally anything and everything without really any, well, definitely no filters. But, you know, but also without, I think, necessarily like that voice in the back of your head that's like, I need to be right or smart. And there, again, are just so few places where that happens, because I think because we engage in so much of our conversation online now, and because we engage in so much topical conversation where we are given, you know, sort of, we're fed lines on what to believe and what to think, that's just becoming increasingly more rare. And so the opportunity to engage in that is one, like, I'm very grateful for it, you know, because when else am I going to have 2 hours to just like sit down with my homie? And then also, it's something that I wish more of us would do. You know, like when we were in college, I feel like, you know, especially like sharing the fraternal experience, right? There were a lot of times where we didn't need an excuse to hang out. Just like, let's just chill. And from there, we'd have some, you know, some good conversations, all that sort of stuff. As you become more of an adult, more of this or that, there's very few opportunities for you to hit someone up and just say, let's just spend time with each other. Because I think we are supposed to, I don't know. I'm bad at this. I think we're supposed to put more distance between ourselves and people. And I don't know why.
I think that's the worst thing that you could do for your well-being and your mental health, is separating yourself from other people.
Well, is it and this, again, I'm bad at this. I don't know how to explain it, but my perception of what I've seen happen in my friend groups, and these are all friends that I love a lot. You know what I mean? I'm not saying anything negative about anyone. It's like, well, we're going to get together to watch the game. We're going to get together to brew a beer. We're going to get together to, there's a justification for why we're together. It's no longer just like, hey man, I just want to hang out and talk. Like, I just want to, you know, see what you think about stuff.
Just come over and kick
listen,
it.
Listen to this cool album and, like, you know, stuff like that. And so that's something that I hope that we begin to re-engage in. Because I think a lot of us have found in our periods of more social isolation that some of our friendships have gotten deeper and have gotten more personal. And I've definitely spent more time around the same people than I used to. And those relationships have strengthened and have become more mature. And I'm thankful for that. And so that's something that I hope that we can all learn to do a little bit better. Because I love talking to people. I love listening to people. So, you know, sometimes working as a bartender there, as you know, there are times when you don't maybe love listening to people as much, but it is your job to do that in that moment. But I hope that we get better at that. I hope, like, again, societally, we're cool with, like, hey, like, you're my friend and I love you and I want to spend time with you and I value what you know and what you think. And engage in those, like, deeper levels of connection.
And that's, yeah, man, that's, like you said, that's kind of what this is all based on. Is
that's
just
awesome.
Getting a chance to
thank you for bringing that project into into the world and into, the space that you're in.
Yeah.
And because when you listen to a good podcast, like you feel like you're in the room, right? Like you feel like you're hanging out. That's why I enjoyed that episode with you and Max so much, because that's like two of my best friends. And I was like, I wanted to jump in and talk while you guys were talking, right?
Yeah.
And of course I know there was a personal connection there. There was a personal, like these are my boys, but also it's just like, oh wow, they're just talking.
Just talking.
And that was nice. They're not selling me anything. They're not trying to convince me of anything. They're just talking.
And then even that, and this is what's like you said, this is the kind of frustrating part about what it is that I'm doing, is that everybody that I have on, they're like, so what do you want to talk about? I'm like, I don't know. Like, what do you want to talk about? Like, right. There's there, to be clear, we do not come into this with any talking points with anybody. Like sometimes, like with a couple people, like a couple episodes back, I had my friend Rhonda on, who's a licensed therapist. I was like, yeah, like you're the person I want to have a conversation with mental health. But I was also not like planning to have a 45 minute conversation about art and the like nuances of it and what she's done, right? Like I'm not planning to do that, but that happened. And then eventually we got to the mental health side of things. But like with when me and Evan sit down, it's just like he comes over on Wednesday and just like, so what do you want to talk about? I don't know. All right. Click record. and something happens.
Human beings are immensely complex.
Yeah.
Right. We are immensely complex people. And I think when you give people the opportunity to exist outside the identity that they have assumed for work or for social media purposes or for whatever, right? Like you learn a lot about that human that you would have never learned otherwise. And that, again, that's another thing that's come out of a lot of this, is because like a year ago, well, so Steven, what do you do? Oh, I play and teach trombone. Me now. Well, I kind of do a lot, like, and I might tell you what I do outside of work before I told you about work. And I think I never would have done that before, Okay. Like, yeah, man. So what do you do? Oh, like I love to brew beer. I like running. I like RPG video games, stuff like that, and I think at no point in my life ever beforehand would I have considered leading with that, as opposed to like, oh, I'm a student in so-and-so. Oh, I'm a professor at blah, blah, blah. I'm a touring artist with, this. And so this reassessment of identity and who we are, I think for a lot of us has been really healthy. And something else that because I spent a good 20 minutes probably talking about how awful everything has been. There's some beauty and tragedy, and one of the things that I have observed, I live in a suburb, and I live in a very nice little suburb.
Yeah.
You've been in the neighborhood. Yeah. Thank you, man. And so I've seen, I've lived here for 3 years. I've seen more families outside walking together and playing. I've seen more kids playing, football on my street and stuff like that than at any other point in 3 years. And I hope and pray that societally that's something that we continue to prioritize after this is all said and done. Let's prioritize being busy a little less and being present a little more. And I'm talking to myself there too. I'm not absent of that. Yeah. I'm not exempt from that observation at all. But yeah, that if I can give like any one person who wants to like make their life better, like just be present a little bit more.
Yeah.
And because every time I make time to do that, I never regret it.
Yeah. And that's definitely something that I'm thankful for doing these shows and podcasts, is it kind of just forces me to like I don't check my phone, don't look at anything. And it's just like, who am I talking to? And it's like, I am conscious enough to realize like, no, people are listening to this, so we can't have dead air. So you have to be very like in touch with the conversation, so that way you have space to talk.
Yeah.
and you have a constant conversation going, and that was definitely something that I was hesitant about, of doing these Zoom things,
Mm.
styles. But with someone like Max and someone like you, especially, I was less hesitant, because I knew that the relationship that we've had over the years, and the intimacy that we've gone into, on our late night drives, the sleeping in the living room at your parents' place, and just talking for
Mm-hmm.
for hours on end. Um, I knew that regardless of where we were at, this conversation would happen anywhere.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It happened in person, and of course, I prefer it in person. But I mean, to anyone though, to anyone, like, this whole Zoom thing is a learned language.
It is.
I've been doing this every single day for 7 months,
That's
and so
wild.
now I know. And well, so I recently connected with this company called Ensemble Block,
Okay.
that's doing online music education for students all over the world, right?
Oh,
And
word.
so yeah, it's been a really fun project. I strongly recommend anyone check them out. Not even to buy stuff, but just like conceptually, it's really neat. The
Okay.
way, yeah, Ensemble Block is the company, and so I'm their trombone creator. That's my job. And when I first started creating the content, I was recording a lot, and at first I was like, the first project I did was a 12-week beginner series, right?
Jeez.
And at first I was going through and recording myself on this same setup, and I would watch and just be like, oh, this feels so uncomfortable. Like, this feels so uncomfortable. Why is this so uncomfortable? And I was like, oh, it's because you're presenting right now. Like, just teach a
Yeah.
lesson. Just teach a
Yeah.
lesson right now. Just teach a lesson. And suddenly everything changed.
Yeah.
Like I was making jokes, and the energy was way better, because I realized, like, oh, you've been teaching lessons, for a long time. And then even then you've been teaching these online lessons now for like 5 or 6 months at that point. So just do that. And it got immediately easier. But yeah, it's a language, this whole thing, and being personable through a screen is hard to do. We rely so much on body language and so much on, little stuff,
Yeah.
that I know that can be really intimidating sometimes. But I hope this is something that we continue to do once we are able to do stuff in person, because like I've enjoyed being able to bring players and teachers from all over the country to work with my students that are based in
Yeah.
Texas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm bringing players from everywhere, because they can just pipe in this way,
Mm-hmm.
right? As opposed to like, okay, you're going to fly into San Antonio, and then I'm going to drive an hour and a half to pick you up from there, and then we're going to put you in a hotel. Like, you know what I mean? Like all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. So there's some really neat educational implications that come
Yeah.
from this.
And I mean, there's not to take away from those experiences, those plane flights, and
Mm-hmm.
getting to go
Oh,
experience a
I
different
missed
different
that.
place.
I missed that so much.
I mean, I did it right before this happened as well.
Yeah.
I got flown out to Minnesota. I had never been out there. I'd never seen snow like that. It was
It's very different.
so cold,
Yeah.
stupid. Why people live out there, I do not understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like I'm not going to go to Minnesota otherwise, if it's not to judge.
Especially not in February.
Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah.
Not to judge an indoor drumline competition, but I mean, I know you got to go to work, Big Dog. So I don't want to hold you too much longer, but I know that you have 50,000 projects that you're working on. So just what do you want to plug? What do you want to shout out? Any final remarks, final thoughts, comments for the kids?
Sure. Yeah. I'll start off with the easy stuff. So yeah, I've got a few things going on. I guess my biggest project right now is what we talked about a little bit earlier. It's a channel on Instagram called 1 Minute Practice Tips. And it is a great educational resource. Right now it's focused on brass, but as I mentioned earlier, I'm in the process of lining up some guest contributors, where we're going to cover topics for different woodwind instruments, percussion, as well as, strings and piano as well. The goal is not to make any money on this. It's just to create a really nice place for students to get information. So I strongly recommend checking that out.
Now, is that one spelled
it's
out, or
number one? Number one. minute practice tips. Yeah. And so that, please go ahead and check that out. And if anyone ever wants to ask for content, let me know. I take requests. I'm also on faculty with, like I mentioned, this company Ensemble Block, which is a tremendous music education resource for programs, for individuals, whatever. The percussion side of it is actually huge. It's massive. So I know for you personally, like, give that a go, man. It's a
I'll definitely check it out,
really
man.
good resource. And then outside of that, I've got a website, stephenwvogel.com. That's like my professional, place. If you want like my personal Insta, it's just Stephen Vogel 1. It's mostly pictures of my dog.
Which nobody's mad at. Ugh.
No, he's really precious. But so that's all the easy stuff. And then, yeah, like, I think I've talked way too much.
No such
but,
thing, man.
In this super weird time, find places to be present. Focus on what you could do instead of what you think you should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Find opportunity in that. And I'd say to everyone, just give yourself a little grace. Give yourself a little bit of grace and a little bit of space. And that doesn't mean you're weak, and it doesn't mean you're bad, and it doesn't mean anything except for the fact that we're all, like I said, dealing with this sort of weird shared trauma, and we can grow from it, or we can absolutely get beat down from it. And I think just giving yourself space to think about things for a minute or two every day is going to help ensure that you grow from it. But man, just thank you for doing this. I hope that you make 1 billion more episodes and you get a bajillion more followers, and you just do this full time, because like I said earlier, I think conversation is one of the most important things we have, and it's something we're doing less and less of these days. So just thank you for bringing this content into this space.
You're welcome, man. Like I said, I'm just out here trying to give people opportunities to talk about stuff they care about. And it was nice getting your perspective, and just something that I've always enjoyed is how well you are able to articulate things that you care about. So thank you for jumping on, giving me your Sunday morning.
Yeah, of course.
Go have fun at work. Go have some more conversations with some people out there in the country.
I will, man.
Enjoy that time. Everybody that's been with us all the way to the end, thank you guys so much for kicking it with us. Hope you guys enjoy the episode. Y'all be easy. Peace. Love y'all.